Imagine walking into a grocery store, your basket empty, your mind on the simple things. A loaf of bread, a carton of milk, a pack of chips. You glance at the shelves, and something feels off. The price tags are creeping higher, and the packages look different. Smaller, thinner, less satisfying. This isn't just your imagination. Welcome to the world of shrinkflation. Shrinkflation is the subtle art of giving you less while charging the same or more. You might not notice it at first. The cereal box you've bought for years now holds 10% less cereal. The chocolate bar seems shorter, the chips lighter. Each small change alone seems insignificant, but together they add up to a pattern of corporate strategy designed to quietly increase profits while keeping consumers unaware. Now imagine the psychological effect. You buy a bag of chips, expecting the same experience, only to find 3/4 of the bag is air. That emptiness mirrors your growing awareness that life is more expensive than it should be. The hours you work, the energy you spend, all suddenly feel quantified in the hollow crunch of a single potato chip. Shrinkflation preys on this subtlety. Companies rely on the fact that humans have limited sensitivity to small changes, a principle known in psychology as the just noticeable difference. For many products, including snacks, consumers only detect a change in weight or size after it reaches around 13%. This ensures that the majority remain oblivious to the slow erosion of value. Globally, shrinkflation is not a new phenomenon. It has been quietly shaping consumer experiences for decades, accelerating whenever input costs rise. From toilet paper sheets shrinking in length to beverage cartons losing ounces, manufacturers have found countless ways to adjust products while keeping prices stable. In 2022 alone, countless companies reduced portions while claiming to maintain value. This is not an isolated practice. It is a systematic approach, embedded deeply into the way modern corporations navigate rising costs, supply chain disruptions, and market pressures. What's remarkable is how seamlessly it blends into everyday life. At its core, shrinkflation is about survival and strategy, but also about perception. Companies want you to feel that you're paying the same for the same product, while subtly nudging the balance of value in their favor. This method works not just on groceries, but across many consumer goods. Tissue boxes, paper towels, frozen foods, practically any item subject to frequent purchase can be adjusted in quantity, size, or quality without triggering immediate alarm. For corporations, it's a dance between economy, psychology, and risk management. Each tiny reduction, each small substitution, is calculated to maximize profit while minimizing backlash. Finally, as consumers, we must ask ourselves what this means in the larger economic context. Shrinkflation is a symptom of broader forces at play. Rising raw material costs, wage inflation, global supply chain disruptions, but also of corporate decisions prioritizing profit over transparency. It is the intersection of necessity and opportunity, and understanding it requires more than noticing a smaller package. It requires a lens through which we see the cumulative effects of incremental reductions across countless products and the impact on household budgets and global consumer trust. This story begins not with one bag of chips, but with the larger, intricate web of consumer economics. Let's take a step back and consider the broader economic stage. Inflation is the invisible tide that shapes our daily lives, often without our conscious notice. When governments inject more money into the economy to stimulate spending, it can lead to rising prices across nearly every sector. Businesses, caught between increasing costs and market expectations, adopt shrinkflation as a survival tactic. The pandemic era offers a stark illustration. Supply chain bottlenecks, labor shortages, and soaring commodity prices forced companies to make tough choices. Rather than passing the full burden of cost onto consumers, they adjusted portion sizes and packaging, a tactic that became normalized across industries. Yet, the effect is not purely defensive. In many cases, the reduction of product quantity exceeds what would be expected from inflation alone. A carton of juice might drop by 10% in volume, while prices remain unchanged, creating additional profit margins. This has given rise to the term greedflation, a concept describing the deliberate expansion of profits under the cover of economic necessity. Major corporations leverage public inattention, relying on human cognitive biases to avoid scrutiny. By making changes incrementally, they reduce the likelihood of consumer backlash, turning a subtle erosion of value into a long-term revenue strategy. Globally, patterns emerge that reveal the scale and persistence of this strategy. In the UK, average pre-tax profit margins of mid-sized companies surged above pre-pandemic levels, even in sectors like veterinary practices and car dealerships. In Australia, corporate profit increases contributed significantly to inflation, exceeding central bank targets. In the United States, consumer goods ranging from milk and eggs to cereal and soft drinks were reduced in volume by up to 14%, while prices escalated beyond inflation. The numbers reveal a deliberate alignment of profit growth with consumer spending patterns, further entrenching the practice. Psychologically, shrinkflation and greedflation exploit the limits of perception. Consumers notice price hikes quickly, but are less sensitive to gradual reductions in quantity or quality. This is intentional. Companies understand that humans rarely weigh products, calculate per-serving costs, or compare historical sizes. Most rely on visual cues and habit. Packaging is designed to appear full and consistent, reinforcing a perception of stability even as the contents diminish. The practice transforms subtlety into a powerful marketing tool, effectively masking financial extraction in plain sight. From a narrative perspective, shrinkflation tells a story about trust and transparency. It underscores the tension between corporate strategy and consumer awareness, between market forces and human behavior. Understanding it requires more than anecdotal observation. It demands attention to patterns, an appreciation for subtlety, and a willingness to examine everyday products critically. The implications extend beyond individual transactions, influencing long-term perceptions of fairness, brand loyalty, and economic literacy. As the bag of chips, the box of cereal, and the roll of paper towels shrink, so too does the implicit trust between consumer and corporation, laying the groundwork for broader discussions about ethics in business. Let's explore the consumer's perspective. Shrinkflation is not always immediately obvious, yet over time, it creates a profound sense of unfairness. Opening a familiar cereal box or snack bag and finding it lighter than remembered triggers a subtle frustration. This isn't just about quantity. It reflects value and trust. The modern consumer expects transparency, but companies exploit small perceptual limits to extract more profit. As products shrink, the feeling of being shortchanged accumulates. Each bite, each serving, becomes a reminder that the everyday items we depend on are no longer consistent, eroding confidence in brands and even economic systems. Consumers often respond through subconscious adjustments. Buying habits change. People may switch brands or shop less frequently. Yet, the perception of stability remains. Corporations understand this behavior, calculating reductions that are unlikely to trigger immediate backlash. Online communities and social media now expose shrinkflation cases in real time, turning subtle deception into public spectacle. Images of tiny candy packs or reduced household products evoke collective outrage. Still, for many consumers, the change is incremental and psychologically masked. The strategy works precisely because it is slow, deliberate, and designed to stay just below conscious detection thresholds. Economic pressures exacerbate these dynamics. Following periods of high inflation or supply chain disruption, companies may feel justified in making more aggressive reductions. The post-pandemic surge in demand, combined with labor and material shortages, encouraged businesses to adjust product sizes and quality subtly. Yet, as inflation stabilized, some companies continued shrinking products, creating what economists now term greedflation. Consumers end up paying more, not for unavoidable costs, but to pad corporate profit margins. This divergence between necessity and profit maximization fuels resentment and mistrust. Human psychology is a critical factor in these strategies. The just noticeable difference principle means small reductions are often invisible, allowing firms to maximize revenue without triggering resistance. Packaging is carefully engineered to appear unchanged. Color, shape, and visual weight reinforce the perception of consistency. Consumers unconsciously assume that size and quality remain constant, further insulating corporations from accountability. In essence, shrinkflation manipulates perception as much as it manipulates quantity. Ultimately, awareness is the consumer's best defense. Recognizing shrinkflation patterns, comparing unit prices, and questioning product changes empower people to make informed decisions. It also pressures companies to act responsibly, as collective awareness can shift purchasing behavior. Shrinkflation illustrates how subtle, incremental strategies can profoundly influence global commerce, consumer behavior, and the psychology of trust. Turning to businesses, shrinkflation is often framed as a survival strategy. Rising input costs, labor, and transportation expenses create pressure to maintain profit margins without alarming customers. Adjusting quantities or packaging subtly allows companies to navigate economic uncertainty. Yet, the line between survival and profit-maximizing manipulation is thin. Many corporations exploit these strategies to exceed necessary adjustments, converting necessity into opportunity. The strategy has become systemic, affecting food, household items, and beverages worldwide. Each reduction is small but cumulative, generating millions in additional profit while maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Economic events shape this landscape. During global crises, from pandemics to geopolitical disruptions, demand fluctuations and supply shortages amplify pressure. Companies face choices: absorb costs, raise prices overtly, or employ shrinkflation. The last is often preferred, as visible price hikes can trigger immediate consumer backlash. Shrinkflation, in contrast, operates subtly, with a long-term cumulative impact. By keeping reductions below perceptual thresholds, companies minimize risk while stabilizing revenue. Globally, the practice is widespread. Major corporations in the US, UK, Australia, and Canada have reduced volumes in staple products by 14%, even after the peak of inflation. Yet, prices continue to rise, suggesting that profit motives extend beyond necessity. Economists note that corporate profits contributed significantly to overall inflation in recent years, revealing a strategy that combines necessity with opportunism. This has raised public awareness, with consumer watchdogs scrutinizing product changes more closely than ever. Skimpflation complements shrinkflation. Companies may substitute cheaper ingredients, downgrade materials, or cut quality in addition to reducing size. Consumers notice subtle differences in taste, texture, or durability, but habitual brand loyalty often outweighs immediate reactions. This dual strategy, reducing quantity and quality, maximizes profit while exploiting psychological and behavioral blind spots. It illustrates a sophisticated understanding of consumer perception and decision-making. The global narrative is clear. Corporate strategy, consumer perception, and economic pressures intersect. Shrinkflation and skimpflation highlight the delicate balance between necessity, profit, and ethics. Awareness, comparison, and informed purchasing are vital. Consumers empowered by knowledge can shift market behaviors, while companies that rely solely on subtle extraction risk long-term reputational damage. Technology and social media amplify consumer awareness. Online communities expose instances of shrinkflation with photographic evidence, creating a collective consciousness. Suddenly, the subtle becomes undeniable. Tiny gummy packs, reduced beverage cartons, and lighter snack bags are shared widely, sparking discussion. This public scrutiny challenges corporate strategies that once relied on consumer oblivion. The visibility of shrinkflation increases pressure on companies to justify changes or adjust practices, reflecting the growing power of informed communities in shaping economic behavior. Regulatory bodies are slowly adapting. Countries like South Korea and Australia have implemented rules requiring transparent labeling, while agencies in the US explore similar policies. Companies attempt to navigate these requirements creatively, sometimes placing labels in inconspicuous locations or using ambiguous language. The tension between regulation and corporate innovation continues, highlighting structural challenges in consumer protection and market accountability. Consumer psychology remains central. People notice price changes more readily than volume reductions. This cognitive bias allows corporations to increase revenue subtly. Packaging design, marketing, and incremental adjustments exploit these perceptual limits. Awareness campaigns, educational content, and vigilant observation help counter these effects. For consumers, understanding the interplay of psychology, economics, and marketing is key to preserving value. Global trends illustrate the scale of the phenomenon. Post-pandemic inflation and supply disruptions created fertile ground for shrinkflation. Yet, even after stabilization, many companies continued reducing product sizes, reflecting greedflation. This demonstrates that shrinkflation is not solely a response to economic pressures, but also a strategic approach to maximize profit. Consumers bear the cumulative impact of these choices across multiple product categories. In conclusion, the interplay of economics, psychology, and corporate strategy drives shrinkflation. Awareness, education, and active consumer engagement can counter subtle exploitation. Understanding these forces enables individuals to make informed choices and supports market accountability. As product sizes shrink and prices rise, conscious observation becomes a critical tool for maintaining fairness in everyday transactions. Finally, let's consider the long-term consequences. Shrinkflation alters consumer expectations, conditioning people to accept less. Over time, smaller portions and lower quality ingredients become normalized. Consumers may continue purchasing familiar brands, unaware of the cumulative loss in value. This normalization can erode trust in companies, creating tension between short-term profit gains and long-term brand loyalty. Businesses must balance immediate revenue with the potential reputational cost of exploiting consumer perception. Behavioral economics plays a role in this dynamic. Humans rely on habit, visual cues, and comparative heuristics to make decisions. Shrinkflation and skimpflation exploit these cognitive shortcuts, reducing consumer resistance. Over time, patterns of reduced quantity and quality reinforce these behaviors. While the individual reduction may be minor, the aggregate effect across multiple products and years is significant. Consumers experience a quiet erosion of purchasing power and satisfaction. Internationally, regulatory responses vary. Some governments impose fines or labeling requirements, while others rely on consumer advocacy groups. South Korea, for example, levies fines for mislabeled products, whereas Australia enforces unit pricing rules to improve transparency. Companies adapt, sometimes creatively, but heightened scrutiny forces greater accountability. Public awareness campaigns complement these measures, educating consumers on detecting shrinkflation and advocating for fair practices. Shrinking products, rising profits, and declining consumer value illustrate a complex intersection of economics, psychology, and corporate strategy. Understanding this interplay is essential for informed purchasing decisions. Awareness empowers consumers to challenge subtle manipulations, compare unit prices, and hold corporations accountable. Knowledge becomes the primary tool to navigate the opaque landscape of modern consumerism. Ultimately, shrinkflation reflects deeper systemic dynamics. Rising costs, supply chain disruptions, and economic uncertainty interact with profit motives and human perception. By examining patterns across nations, industries, and products, we gain insight into the invisible forces shaping everyday life. The challenge lies in recognizing these forces, understanding their consequences, and responding proactively. As we reach the final stages of this narrative, it's essential to consider corporate ethics. Shrinkflation and skimpflation illustrate the tension between profitability and transparency. While economic pressures can justify minor adjustments, deliberate over-reduction crosses into exploitation. Consumers notice patterns over time. Lighter cereal boxes, smaller beverage cartons, reduced snack portions, revealing a slow erosion of trust. The psychological manipulation inherent in shrinkflation works subtly, allowing companies to mask profit-driven decisions under the guise of necessity. Awareness becomes a key tool for maintaining balance between corporate strategy and consumer rights, reinforcing the importance of vigilance in everyday purchases. Global scrutiny is increasing. Media coverage and social networks amplify consumer complaints, making once invisible reductions impossible to ignore. Companies must navigate public perception while adjusting profits. Regulatory agencies implement guidelines, ensuring transparent labeling and fair presentation. These measures, though partial, empower consumers to make informed choices. They also push corporations to reconsider aggressive shrinkflation practices, aligning profitability with accountability. Countries such as Australia and South Korea exemplify proactive measures, while US and European regulators monitor practices closely, emphasizing the global relevance of the issue. Consumer empowerment is critical. Tracking unit prices, comparing historical product sizes, and staying alert to subtle changes helps counter corporate strategies. Awareness campaigns educate shoppers about shrinkflation's cumulative impact, fostering informed decision-making. Social pressure and community discussions amplify the effect, creating market incentives for companies to adopt fairer practices. When consumers collectively recognize manipulation, brands face reputational and financial consequences, balancing the profit-driven motives of corporations with ethical business practices. Psychology, economics, and consumer behavior intersect in unique ways. Shrinkflation exploits habitual buying patterns, visual assumptions, and limited perceptual sensitivity. Skimpflation further reduces product value through lowered ingredient quality. Together, they form a sophisticated approach to maximizing profit while minimizing perceived loss. The broader consequence is an erosion of trust in the marketplace, influencing purchasing decisions, brand loyalty, and long-term consumer confidence. Vigilance, education, and proactive engagement are necessary to ensure fairness and value in an increasingly opaque economic environment. Ultimately, the consumer holds the key to change. By observing patterns, demanding transparency, and making conscious choices, individuals can influence corporate behavior. Shrinkflation is not inevitable. It is a system shaped by perception, oversight, and awareness. As the global economy evolves, the role of informed consumers becomes more crucial. Recognizing, understanding, and responding to these subtle manipulations ensures that purchasing power and trust are preserved, fostering a healthier and more equitable marketplace.